cool. I'm just gonna start calling it episode. All right, cool. 'Cause, yeah, I'm gonna get confused. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2, technically 3 of Talk of the Trades. Quick shout out to the team who helped made the podcast possible. Shout out to Ashley. She came in, helped us decorate. Ryan did some last minute touches. You know, Sydney, Bianca, all those guys working really hard to make this happen. So appreciate you guys. Today on the pod, we are going to talk about a few topics. So it's 2025, right? So we're going to talk about marketing trends and AI innovations. We're going to talk specifically home services. Also going to talk about the new Google Gemini integration. So that's been rolling out. We got it in our workspace finally. I used it yesterday for the first time, so that was kind of cool. Yeah. We'll also talk about a webinar we just had with Power Selling Pros. So Brigham Dickinson was the host, and we had a bunch of our clients on there. So thank you guys all for attending. We'll talk about some highlights there. And then if we have some time, we'll chat about our New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
If we have any.
Yeah. Please. With my problems, I got 100.
Okay. See, I have 0 this year. So I'm going to have to think of one through the episode. All right, cool. So marketing trends for home services in 2025. What do you got, Aaron?
Yeah.
What do you think's on the horizon?
I mean, it depends on your brand and where you're at, but I think we've already seen a massive shift in Google Ads tactics. We've seen, a lot of the bigger brands that are looking to roll things up pretty quickly are just chasing bottom of the funnel leads. There is an empty void there for brand recognition, so we definitely see that. We're talking about that a lot. I think the streaming stuff that you've been working on and looking at, the Hulus, the Paramount, it's crazy, that whole net neutrality argument that we had back in the day. It's basically what our streaming services is now.
Yep.
But I think getting premium placements on those is really key. We're also starting to see smaller brands do more video and do it well.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think all of those things mean you can spend a lot of time, effort, and money everywhere. And so how do we simplify the marketing and look at, okay, I want to own this platform, or I want to own this message. And so those are some trends that we're at least looking at. There's a lot more outbound with even spam, of course, but I think a lot of companies have basically way more opportunities than they ever have before.
Yeah.
And so I think don't chase that shiny object. Really be honest about what's working for you and lean in on that. And so I think those are some of the trends that at least we're talking about. But Google cost per clicks and cost per acquisition can continue to go up.
Yeah.
So I think local influencers, I hate even using that word, but finding local communities that you can engage with already.
Yeah.
We're looking at some chamber of commerce. There was one here locally in San Antonio. It's like $300. Really good chamber of commerce, $300 a year. We get a landing page on the website. They have an active social media. Those are the things that I would look for. Okay, get into that chamber, start building real relationships, and then comment on every social post.
Yeah.
And so I think really diving into the community-based in your backyard is where clients should be.
Yeah, I think hyperlocal, is going to be one of those continuing emerging opportunities, because as you talk about, like, there's so much more opportunity in platforms. That just means there's so much more noise out there, right? And so how do we find like an edge to get in front of some of these micro audiences and really position ourselves well as potentially like good corporate citizens, where we are supporting little leagues, we're supporting chambers, we're supporting local organizations? Because I think at the end of the day, that is what's going to help you keep top of mind, because we are fortunate that we have a great visionary in our team in Ben, and he's really plugged into what's happening in private equity. And what we're seeing is that a lot of private equity, they're pulling out of these kind of upper funnel, more traditional type tactics, hyperlocal marketing, and they are just trying to outspend everybody on lower funnel. So, Google Ads, and that's probably part of the reason we're seeing our, cost per click go up, our CPAs go up. So as that starts happening, we've known for a long time, like, Google just continues to jack up the prices. And when we have a, $3 million shop with a $8,000 a month budget, they can't compete with a private equity company who's spending 40, 50 grand a month, right? And so we have to be creative in our pursuit. And I think what we've been leaning towards is, still bid on your branded search terms. So when we do build that top of mind awareness, you have an opportunity to capture those at least. So I think keeping that mindset with the opportunity of hyper local, still bidding on your branded search, and just understanding that private equity is pulling out of those more traditional mediums. And then to touch on the streaming stuff, that's been really exciting. And Ben really challenged me on that tactic, and is it worthwhile for us? And after kind of researching some of like user behaviors and how people are consuming like TV nowadays, and I was trying to think about it the other day, like when we were younger, we looked forward to like evening programming, like coming home watching stuff like Boy Meets World, or what was that show, Everybody Loves Raymond, like Friends, stuff like that, right? But there's not as much keystone programming anymore on those types of I guess local broadcast channels. And so now what's happening is people will still consume news in the morning because they're trying to get weather updates, traffic updates, that's where they'll get their local news. And then in the evenings, everyone's coming home and saying, okay, we're going to watch, the newest Netflix series, or we're going to watch, Landman on Paramount Plus. And so I think there's been a big shift in just how people consume those types of TV shows specifically. But the other thing that's super interesting, we have a younger staff, I would say, in some regards, and more so thinking about Gen Z's user behaviors. I was talking with one of our account executives the other day, and she was talking about how the California fires have impacted her YouTube podcasts, because she goes home and she watches YouTube content, right? Not YouTube TV, but like YouTube. And so we got to think about there's programming there as well. And so if we take a step back and we think about, a marketing channel in video, if you want to be there, where are the areas you can be? And I think, I've been a huge proponent of YouTube for a very long time, just because it's part of that Google universe, and the targeting capabilities, the retargeting, all that. Huge fan of premium connected TV. So Hulu, Paramount Plus, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, all those platforms now have commercials built in. So that's something to consider when you guys are, reevaluating marketing plans, or figuring out, hey, how do we have more top of funnel brand awareness stuff that's not TV, that's not radio, right? It's not outdoor. Major opportunity there.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about, there was about 10 things that popped up too in my mind, that premium placements are great, but having the brand strategy at the beginning is really important too. A couple of things, we had a couple clients this week, because there's about a freeze is about to happen in Texas here, probably all over the nation. So we got clients that are getting into the day shows, Good Morning SA, whatever. Okay, you're already doing that. You're getting on TV. You're doing a great job. Well, there are social media accounts that are also looking for that kind of content. And so, yes, you can go to the traditional stations, which still carry a lot of weight and value, but that same message can be shared on social. And there are people that have really good followings in your backyard that you can pitch the same dang thing. Hey, this is what I said on Great Day SA. Would love to talk to you on your podcast. Would love to talk to you on your social media, because people need to know about this. And talking to small groups that have influence, I think, can be a major key. But keep it within the natural flow of your business.
Yeah. And to speak to kind of, thinking about strategy, one thing that I always try to tell our clients is like, don't skimp out on the creative and the messaging that you have, right? You don't need some crazy creative campaign that is, humorous or doesn't really like fit your brand. What I mean is, if you want to go that route, 100%. But how do you make sure your creative stretches across like the different platforms, or your messaging? Like Aaron was just saying, like if you're on, morning show, how do you take that content and then stretch it out to make sure it appears on your social channels, or when you are on like another podcast, that you have a streamlined message? Because one thing that's always important important is that reach and frequency, right? You need frequency around a certain message for people to kind of really to stay with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Before, I think we've talked about this. It's like back in the day, it was like you had to hit people 7 or 8 times. Now it's like 20 to 30 times that you have to hit somebody with the same exact message before they even know like you exist.
Yeah.
So, um, really important to think about your messaging and how can you create creative that works for your brand, it's true to your brand voice, and really invest in that. One thing I always tell our clients is like, look, we're about to spend $2 million on media, right? Well, how much are we investing for the assets to support those tactics, right? And I always say, like, just give me like 3% of that so we can go out and shoot really nice video to have, so we can create some really nice graphics, and making sure that we have a message that is cohesive across all those.
Yeah, yeah. Something that came to mind that I'd be interested to talk out is the future of content marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the fears that I have. And the group I was talking to yesterday, most of them are retired, and they after I talked to them about AI, they were very happy they've been retired and they don't want to have to deal with this as
Yeah.
business owners.
Yeah.
And I'm talking from urologists to landscapers. It was a wide variety of white hair in there. So it was really fun talking about it. But one of the true fears that I have is how much crap content we're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're using AI to basically create your content without the human touch, man, it's going to be good. But all it's going to do is optimize itself off of everything else that's out there. And
Yeah.
so, how do you break through that noise? And we've seen as humans, especially organizational humans, whether it's with government structures or business structure or family structure, when you swing hard, you swing all the way to one side, and then
Mm-hmm.
you don't ever come back to the middle. We always come all the way back. And so
Right.
there's a pendulum swing. And so as we go away from traditional media and everything gets to digital, everything goes bottom of the funnel,
Yeah.
naturally there are openings in other areas of your marketing. And
Mm.
as we lose human connection and we're really just doom scrolling 24/7,
Yeah.
the fear that I have, okay, so pessimist and then optimist, let's talk that out. Pessimist is we're going to get further in our hole, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be less social creatures, and we're not going to long for it.
Okay.
The optimist is, well, we're going to get so worn out by lacking human connection that we're naturally going to strive for human connection. So there's going
Gotcha.
to be a rebound.
Okay.
What side of the coin do you want to be on? I know you're going to be on the optimism coin. I'm
Yeah.
trying to pull myself out of the pessimism
Yeah.
side of it and
Yeah.
be like on the optimist. But curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I that's super interesting because I'm always trying to figure out like what's the secret sauce, like what makes this successful versus that successful, and um, I think I'm so close to it as like a marketer that like when I get a sense of like that a piece of content is not genuine, whether it's created by like a normal person or AI, that's usually when I tune out. And so I'm looking for like the genuineness kind of factor of it, and then also the like the helpfulness of it. Like, does this like help me and resonate with me? And so that's kind of what I guess, no matter what, if it's like done by AI or done by a person, I think those are the two things I'm kind of looking at. But it's interesting to think about. The other thing on this point is we just saw, the other day when we were working on our like show notes for YouTube, that now it's like making you specify, well, this is AI or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm interested to see like now that these pieces of content will be designated, will they ever have some sort of like rating system? Like back in the day, like TV never had a rating system on, shows, and then all of a sudden, boom, now there's like some sort of like rating system around it to let you know it's like, oh, for kids 13 plus or whatever. And so same thing with like AI. Are they going to start like labeling this? Because I think it's going to get to a point where you're not going to know whether this was done by AI or was done by a human, And like the app that always like blows my mind when I'm getting served it is that Captions app, where it will actually clone you, and like you just type in what you wanted to say and then it'll do it. The mouth of it is still a little bit off, but I think we're getting closer and closer to where it's going to be very hard to discern like the difference between the two, and whether it'll matter or not, I don't know, because I think at the end of the day, the market ultimately decides like what works,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like why are the Paul brothers so famous, right? Why are some of these influencers? And I think people just catch a wave and then boom, it takes off. But interested to see like what, and I think like kind of the Asian countries like China and Japan are like way ahead of us on some of this because they have already created like totally fake like AI influencers
Mm-hmm.
that have like millions of followings, right? And they're doing like the craziest stuff, like cooking and just like dancing and random stuff. And this is not a real person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but people are falling in love with it and building like a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's gonna
And
be interesting.
I think we've historically, you see humans, we're fascinated with the idea of perfection, or we love to see things that we aren't.
Right.
And so if you're creating an AI influencer that is something we will never be,
Mm-hmm.
is that going to continue to stay like that model that we want to be, or is there a reversion of it? And like, you know what? I don't really subscribe to that anymore. I want to
Right.
see somebody that's not on Ozempic, or I want to see like a
Yeah.
normal person that can shake their hands.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we've got to understand our target audience. And there's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be defectors that go on the other side, but is that audience big enough to carry your business?
Right.
And I think that's where, if we've got clients or if there are brands out there where you're the owner operator and one of your strengths is building relationships, you can do more by being in front of all your commercials, being active on social, and in the real world. There are plenty of nonprofit opportunities and
Yeah.
being visible in your community. But these bigger groups, they could create more AI stuff and really focus on having a fake figurehead.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see what resonates with people as we move forward.
Yeah. And so you brought up a great point. Shout out to Dan who gave us a bunch of great show notes and we talked about zero click search and one
Mm-hmm.
of the things he had asked is like okay like super great content but like now how do I apply it? What was the acronym you used the other day? It was like OYA or
Yeah. So OIA,
okay.
and I believe it came from one of my old Bible school teachers,
Mm-hmm.
from Matt Cole. And when you're reading the Old Testament and doing stuff, it's like, okay, well, what does this mean? And
Got you.
okay, well, Israel's always going through this same process, right?
Right.
Israeli Jews, whatever. And so they go through this slavery, supplication, salvation process all throughout the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what he challenged us to do is, in today's age, when you read the Old Testament, it's often hard to apply principles that you're reading. And so, we
Right.
always talked about there are three things you should do whenever you read. You should observe,
Okay.
interpret, and apply it. And
Okay.
so, most people stop at observe.
Okay.
A lot of people stop at interpret. Very few apply. And
Okay.
so, I naturally, as a youth pastor and was at a camp, I taught the dudes that I was coaching about dating, and I used OYA, observation, interpretation,
Yeah. Yeah.
application. So anytime they saw a girl being loud to try to get their attention, they'd all look at each other and be like, OYA, OYA, like she's trying to get our attention, whatever.
Yeah.
And I tried to use that to implement. And so anyway, long story short,
Yeah.
that's the
So
observation. Yeah.
to circle back on it, so OYA, so we've observed because I want to provide some value to like folks that are watching out there. If you are a business owner, you are in the trades. So we've observed like some of these trends, and specifically we're honing in on AI. So we've interpreted what the impact can be, right? So how do you apply? Like what can we tell people out there to like apply? It seems like one thing you were saying is like, hey, AI is going to be there, but one way you can get an edge is to continue to be genuine and put out content on your own. So number one, don't get so lost in having to do AI because we don't know how people are going to react to it. So stay in front of the camera. People I think want to connect with your brand. Obviously, it humanizes it. So I think that's probably one. Number two, I would say, when you're thinking about AI, don't, what do they say? Don't eat the elephant in one
Mm-hmm.
bite. Like try
Mm-hmm.
to take chunks out of it, right? And so try to find one use case to maybe apply to, your potential, business. And maybe it's not somebody appearing in front of the camera, AI, but like us, we use AI to help us with our show notes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about like use cases there that will help you maybe make your content better. So any other thoughts
I
on
mean, the
that?
best takeaway that we can say is, and I'm starting to challenge team members here to do this, put a sticky note on your monitor that just
Mm.
says, how can I do this faster with AI?
Yeah.
And Dustin Lee and I were talking about it the other day, and that's like the easiest thing you can do, because saying I'm going to work on AI and making it a goal or a quarterly rock is great. But if you're looking at it every single day and you've got to do some of the same jobs, like there's a lot of repetitive tasks. I
Yeah.
think also if you have an organization, well, first, I'd look at internal processes before I look at marketing to use AI first.
Okay.
And so what are the monotonous tasks that your team is saying we need to hire another CSR, we need to hire another office manager, or for us, we
Yeah.
might need to hire another copywriter? Well, okay, great. Have we tried using AI first to make our jobs quicker and more efficient before we just add more payroll and healthcare and 401k matching?
Mm-hmm.
Let's try to do that so we can lean more and invest more in our team. And so good examples like that are taking spreadsheets, and instead of writing in a long form, make the AI, whether you're on Gemini or ChatGPT, push out your content into an AI digestible form.
Yeah.
If you're on the road, start a conversation, a chat with your AI tool of choice,
Yeah.
have it email you the notes afterwards. And so there are ways that we can implement in our daily life. Once you start doing it in your daily life, then we can start talking about marketing with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's huge. Figuring out ways you can use it operationally, and I think the challenge that you put out to the team has been great in terms of thinking about how AI can help you. Because I'm always trying to just figure out things on my own sometimes, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should check with AI. And something you told me, a couple months ago was like, think about using AI as like a companion to help you think through something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now I'm like, hey, you were an expert in data analysis. I'm trying to figure out how to match revenue back to a call tracking report. How would you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, boom, gives me like all this information, and it just gets those wheels turning, so you can understand like, oh, okay, I didn't really think about it from this perspective, or no, that would never work. What are some other ways to do it? So, um, love, love that we're putting that call to action out to the team. And so hopefully some of those things are helpful for you guys when you think about, how can you use AI? And so obviously it's going to be continue to be a trend. I know we kind of got spiraled into AI, but yeah. So another marketing trend here, doing more with
Mm-hmm.
less.
Mm-hmm.
So seems, I think we run into it too. We have clients like, hey, how can we, trim our budgets a little bit and still, do more? And it's been, it's always a challenge. And the one thing that, we have been focusing on as an agency, really buzzy term we started hearing last year, CRO, or conversion rate optimization. And I shared an article with the team this morning at like 5 in the morning because I was up early. But,
Yeah.
so, and there was a lot of interesting things. And one thing that I never, I guess, dawned on me that this article talked about was like, start with looking at your past data first to like try to understand, because is your traffic going down? Because obviously you need more traffic for more opportunities for people to convert, to ultimately turn into customers. And that's one thing like I didn't think of. There was a couple other things too, is like look at your cost per clicks, look at your CPAs, because if you're seeing some sort of trend there, how can you kind of revert back to what you were doing to try to bring stuff down? So I
Mm-hmm.
think my whole thing with doing more with less is conversion rate optimization. And basically what that means in a nutshell is like, when somebody gets to your landing page, or I think we could even apply it to when somebody calls your call center, how do you get to convert that person into just a visitor or a caller to an actual opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can then turn into a customer. And from the digital side, I think we can talk about landing page experience and all that. From the, let's just say the call center side, I think it's like training and scripts and understanding objections and that sort
Mm-hmm.
of stuff.
Yeah, and even there's a really good example that happened just last week of a handyman company that we work with and support, and they're new, they're really rolling out, and basically it's we do everything handyman related, and so our team has been writing content silos for every service under the sun, But in reality, the most valuable piece of content that we've done for them is attic ladder installs and putting
Mm,
pricing out there. So our attic ladder page, because we gave pricing and we created a really nice looking table,
yeah.
our content team is now able to go and pitch it to Reddit, put it on all these other
Mm,
backlink sites, and get more momentum. And so that page now ranks better than anything else. But we've been writing about deck staining, about all these things
mm,
because yes, they do it. But when I talk about like doing more with less, let's create a resource on what we're great at,
yeah.
and let's use that as the tip of the spear instead of doing the shotgun approach, which I think is still relevant. We should be creating pages for all of that. But we'd get a lot more traction if we had a painting calculator of how much is it per square foot,
Yeah.
and really pushing that for link building and on external sources, because then what you can do is your social media content could be about the attic ladder pricing table, or if you ever wondered about your attic and blah blah blah, it's not just get your attic ladder installed today. It's here's the pricing, here are the
Yeah.
benefits, and you can find it all right here.
Yeah.
And so it's also just focusing in on what we're doing good, and looking at their pricing table, because that's what people want.
Yeah.
People want to know.
And as you say that, man, like that will naturally help with conversion rate optimization, because now you're building trust with somebody. You're giving pricing up front. You are giving them another resource, a tool, a calculator that they can use to figure stuff out. Because in the home service space, yes, we understand there's like demand, like your AC breaks and it's 100 degrees outside. You need somebody now. Your plumbing breaks. That's some. But what about like the whole other audience who like knows that their Freon is leaking out of their system and eventually they're going to have to replace it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be in a discovery mode. That's going to be a 10, 12, $15,000 purchase for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of times they're not going to you know unless you have a lot of disposable income, just say, hey, yeah, come replace it. Typically, people are going to shop around, get quotes. Same thing with, like the foundation space. Like, you got cracks in your wall, and you're going to start doing research, and you're going to find out, man, it's going to be 15, 20, $30,000. Then you start looking for more resources to try to find that stuff. And so when we integrate those tools or those guides on those pages, what it does is build trust. It gives people resources to ultimately, maybe they don't convert right then and there, but I think it will make you more memorable and they will come back to you and say, hey, and it might be the difference in like, hey, you weren't the cheapest, you weren't the most expensive, but you know what? I feel your company was most trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have the price shoppers that just want it cheapest, right? I think you're going to also have a segment of people who want the most premium, expensive, in their mind, premium relates to expensive, which is not always true. But then you have a majority of folks that will kind of go in the middle. That's why what's really popular in the trades is the good, better, best,
Mm-hmm.
right? And typically, where do people land?
Yeah, no.
In the middle, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's super important. The other thing you were mentioning there in terms of the calculator and just having the guide. I can't remember what I was going to say about it, um, but yeah, all
Yeah.
good things, I think. And so, things to consider to add on your pages. I think for the longest time, we've just say, oh, if you have a blog with like internal links and backlinks, it's going to do, what you need to do. But when you're really thinking about how can I get somebody to convert, it's about having those call to actions, those tools, those resources for people to
Mm-hmm.
use. So, cool. The other interesting, oh, I know what it was when you were talking about Reddit.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, so, which brings us to another trend that we had here, which was search everywhere optimization.
Mm.
So SEO, but search everywhere optimization, right? See what they did there?
Wow.
So, so how do you optimize for like Reddit? TikTok, side note, we'll see what happens with them.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, Facebook, like YouTube. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff on YouTube just for the podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
like there's been 3 or 4 things that you've done that made like our first 2 episodes get more views than any of our other content has
Yeah.
all year. So, what are your thoughts on like this search everywhere optimization that we're starting to hear about even more?
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. It's exactly what I think we need to be going towards, and it's the whole same answer: put out great content, and you're gonna get rewarded. But I don't really love that.
Yeah.
I think there are some interesting tactics that big brands are doing. Like there's a travel SEO agency that I was talking to last week,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually said that the bots for a lot of the AI tools and the crawlers are not sophisticated enough to devalue spam. So
Mm.
they're actually a lot of the big brands that have, and I'm talking millions of pages. What they do is they feed different resources to the crawlers, and it's just keyword stuffed right now
Mm.
because you can send a JSON file to let's just say the Perplexity AI crawler. They don't have
Yeah.
to actually visit your website.
Mm.
You can just say here it is, and it's like what people used to do with SEO: a bunch of white text on a white
Oh
page
yeah.
with AC Repair New York, AC Repair New York, AC Repair New York. The same thing is happening there. So I think it's the same thing. Put out really good content. Stay singularly focused on what you're great at, but be aware of where people are coming from. And
Yeah.
so I think the same incentive is there for a lot of these AI bots is they want to give a great user experience and they want to deliver results so that people keep using it and are on these memberships, these
Yeah.
monthly memberships, right? And so making sure that you look at the sources like we talked about the other day on Perplexity, where are they pulling their searches from? Is it from Yelp? Is it from wherever, Reddit? And then just understanding and engaging in those communities if you find value in it. But I
Yeah.
think for us as SEOs, one of the key things about your website that gives me a little bit of pause, but also optimism is the generative AI search is going to change on every page load.
Yeah.
And so if we're optimizing for generative AI and we get a search snippet, that search snippet could be gone the next time somebody searches. It could be on somebody else's. And so we need to write content that's written for the generative search, but from a optimizing everywhere, and maybe I'm finally landing the plane. Uh, I want to embed the videos from YouTube. I want to
Yeah.
embed TikTok. I want to embed any kind of mediums that you're using on that Attic Ladder page. We also have before and afters from Company Cam. We
Yeah.
we want the client to put some videos out there so we can embed them there because we were talking about search everywhere. These are two Google properties with YouTube and with Google Search, but we want to overwhelm that page with great content so we can be seen everywhere else.
Yeah, the other point I'll make is, and you were kind of circling on this stuff, is really understanding what optimization means on each platform, right? So, like for Google for years, we've had the benefit of what the webmaster tools to kind
Mm-hmm.
of tell us, and not all platforms have that. And one thing that you brought up when we were looking at our YouTube stuff is how important tags were. How important, even the file name was, right? And so when contractors out there, when you're talking to your agencies or your partners or you're doing it yourself, take a step back and say, okay, what does optimization mean on this platform, right? Like Instagram forever, it was like, oh, to be optimized, you need 20 hashtags, you need a caption that's like X long, and you need to tag 2 people. Something like that, right? So before you really start figuring out or you really start to optimize, you need to know what do I need to optimize,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's so many different platforms out there. So take a step back, figure out, okay, what do I need to optimize here, and then attack it in that way, and then see if it eventually works or makes impact, and if not, try to continue to iterate and see what works best.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, and
So
exactly what we're talking about here. I mean, revealing behind the curtain. Dennis used AI to create the flow, the notes, but then what we're going to do is we're going to take the transcript from this, put it in the same thread, and say, okay, here's what actually happened.
yeah,
Now, what we want is let's identify what kind of captions we want to put out, what kind of title, description, and all
yeah.
that. But you can go in with a singular focus of this is what I want to talk about, but the natural flow can change as you go. And
For
so,
sure. Yeah. So it's always changing, just like Google has. So
mhm.
cool. All right. Next topic. I know we were going to talk about Google Gemini integration. I don't know.
Yes.
I feel as much about this as you do. I just know
Yeah.
that it popped up in my Gmail and it wrote like an email for me yesterday, which was cool because I'd been trying different plugins because you get those like just emails from whoever, and you want to respond but you don't want to take the time to type something out. I give it a 1 sentence prompt and boom, it gave me like a solid response. And I think it goes back and reads my emails because I'm the type of guy that says like awesome and thanks with an exclamation point,
Mm-hmm.
and it brought all that stuff in. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are your, I guess, big takeaways from this Google Gemini
Yeah.
integration into our workspace?
Yeah, so one of my resolutions, and it's not a resolution, it's just I got to change, is for every political podcast I listen to, I've got to balance it out with also an AI related or marketing related podcast, so I'm not just getting beat up with drama. And
Hmm.
I was listening to a Jotform podcast, and they were talking about AI agents, and
Okay.
that's when I heard that Gemini rolled it in. I got to tell you, I've been pissed at Google for the past like 5 or 6 months because if you're on a Google Workspace, the two main competitors, Outlook 365 with Microsoft, and then Google Workspace. We've been a
Yeah.
Google company for a long time. Well, our licenses are like $14 a month per email. Well, when they rolled out Gemini, they said, "Great, now it's $30 a month per email." Well, we've
Yeah.
got 30 emails on our account, and while we can handle it, I didn't want to do that, so
Right.
we've been using GPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, found out that Gemini realized their real competitor is not, or well, Google, their real competitor is not Chat GPT users. It's Microsoft Outlook 365 users. So
Hmm.
Outlook 365 rolled out Copilot, and it's been in there
Oh
native
wow.
with the original like licensing.
Okay.
Well, Google increased the prices by $2 instead of the 15 or doubling the price, and so it's now native to Google Workspace.
Okay.
So that's what I was excited about. Was for a lot of reasons. The first for me because I think everything is potentially a scam as the company trolls me about it.
Yeah.
Is if we're only using Google, but also all of our spreadsheets, all of our Google Docs, everything is on Google Workspace. That's
Yeah.
one less liability we have. If we've got clients' information, even their style guides and brand guidelines,
Yeah.
we don't need to open that up to other AI tools. Let's keep it in the Google ecosystem.
For sure.
So I like that. However, it's still light years behind GPT.
Is it? That's
It's
what I was going to ask you
yeah,
next. How does it stack up? Because I know GPT, I'm hearing rumors that there's going to be another one. I think we talked about it in our first episode that there's like a $200 subscription now. So wondering how it stacks up. I mean, the simple task I gave it yesterday was sufficient
yeah,
and, I was good. But like today, when I had a Google Meet this morning, and the first prompt I got is like, I'll take notes for you.
mm-hmm,
So I was like, cool, like do it. I don't know where the notes went or
yeah.
where they are, but I haven't had a chance to review them. But what has been your experience? Like if I guess rate GPT 1 to 10 and Gemini 1 to 10 to kind of give us
Yeah.
an
So
idea.
Gemini probably a man. My expectations probably a 6.
Okay, that's
GPT is going to be like an 8.5 or 9.
okay. All right.
Speed wise, Gemini is quicker
Is it okay?
because it's doing less.
Uh,
GPT takes a little bit longer, but
Gotcha.
I was comparing and contrasting some HubSpot work this morning, and Google does not think intuitively, or Gemini's product, they're not thinking intuitively enough and going the next step where GPT is. Another thing about GPT is you can save those conversations and share them a little bit better within the workspace.
Okay,
Google hasn't really rolled that out.
gotcha.
What is really neat about Gemini with Google is that you can push and export directly to create a doc. So if you've got a thread, you can say, great, export this to Google Docs.
Nice.
So that's cool. You could also say, great, now export this into a drafted email in my Gmail account. So those two are great.
Mm.
But I use AI for spreadsheet work more than anything.
Yeah.
And so copying and pasting back and forth from GPT has been an issue for me,
Yep. Yep.
and it errors out a lot.
Mm.
Gemini has not been able to write to sheets yet, so that hasn't happened yet. But what I'm experiencing or what I'm hoping is we can use within Google Sheets a lot better the Gemini aspects of collecting data and everything. So that's cool. I know Austin, our EA, he was looking at it and he was asking about the California wildfires on both platforms, and he said Google's response was, "I can't talk politics."
Mm.
GPT kind of just said everything about the wildfires, and he said he kept asking Gemini, "No, I just want to understand what's going on with the fires.
Right.
Can't talk politics. Can't talk politics." So,
Yeah, the intriguing thing when I see these like competitor platforms, it's like, how long is it until, well, Gemini is, I guess, clearly kind of learned from some of GPT's like shortcomings, and because I know we've heard a lot of crazy stories about hallucinations and the type of like content that GPT
Hmm.
might give you. So it seems like they have guardrails there. But now hearing like some of the things that Gemini can do that Chat GPT can't, it's going to be interesting to me. How long is it until Chat GPT says, "Oh yeah, we can do that too,"
Hmm.
and then they steal it and now it's part of their platform, and
Yeah.
then so at some point I think they'll get relatively close. But the other thing, I don't know if you have any insight, but like the large language models that they're built on, I feel like Google, with all the data they've had, will eventually have to catch up with GPT. I don't know what GPT kind of based everything off of, but that's another thing in my mind. I'm wondering like how long is it until Gemini,
Yeah.
finally kind of, takes over.
And I think that's where Gemini is a little quicker because a lot of that stuff is stored, in completely different databases and warehouses, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it accesses it a lot quicker. GPT takes more time to scan the web and really look for that stuff. I think the really interesting thing that you and I have been talking about a lot that's scary, but also pretty exciting, is the AI agents, and then also the
Mm.
video we tried to show in episode 000, I think, of a guy basically getting advice because the AI is looking at his screen while
Yeah.
he's designing stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that Gemini released or showed is the potential, and what they're working on
Wow.
is the AI agent where you open a window for Gemini, say, here are 10 businesses, give me all the company emails, the primary points of contact, how many reviews they have, and just kind of doing that data. And you click go, and you're watching on your window as it just is scrolling through and going to the website,
Yeah.
scanning the data, pulling it in,
It's
like just
crazy.
harvesting it. So all that data work is really at risk from an entry level position, which brings, I know we're getting long winded here, but when we talk about AI replacing jobs, another big concern is when you hire at an agency like us, or if you're hiring a parts runner, it's completely different. But for us, we may hire like a account coordinator to shadow an account executive and learn the ropes. We don't really need that as much in the future because Google Meet is now writing notes for you, which is then turning into Google Tasks or into Basecamp. And so all that like paperwork is going to be less necessary. So
Yeah.
what about the younger workforce coming in that already doesn't want to work? What about the younger workforce that they're not able to now have these entry level positions because
Yeah.
that's what AI is for?
Wow.
And that's where I think the workforce is going to change.
That's crazy to even think about. So my hope is that because culture index, I'm a low D. I hate like monotonous, like repetitive tasks, even though I'm a high C. But I'm like, man, I wish somebody like could do that because I want to focus on strategy. I want to focus on creative. I want to think more critically about like bigger, items. And so that's my hope for somebody like me with my personality. It's like it's gonna get rid of like this like monotonous like administrative type work, to help me like focus on bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I'm hoping that's true for like other people within our organization too. It's like we free them up of that so we can use our minds to be more innovative and how do we stay ahead on stuff.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. The next topic we're going to chat about is just our webinar we had with Power Selling Pros.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you to Brigham Dickinson for hosting that, and thank you to all of our clients that showed up. It was interesting how it started kind of with the AI conversation, but we've, eventually segued into kind of the CSR and inbound and outbound. And one of the big, takeaways that I had from that, it was just a small nugget, but, to me, I think it goes like so far in the psychology of someone. And he was talking about when you get an inbound call and you're at capacity and you are booking 3 days out, how do you still try to retain that customer if they're trying to move quickly. And he said start with like really listening to them and acknowledging their problem or their issue. But the key part was he flipped it. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to put you on a wait
Yeah.
list, no, we're going to put you on our urgency list. And the way he positioned it was saying, like, hey, we don't have potentially time right now, but we have you on this urgency list. I can guarantee we can get you in 3 days, but because you're on this urgency list, if we have any sort of cancellation or, and he was saying like it's true when guys are out in the field, they might go to a job and it gets done a lot faster, and now their, schedules opened up and so they can go get to another one. So that little nugget just there to me was like massive. And I'm gonna, talk to our clients about it and saying like, hey, how are you handling these things? Because when we're in Texas and we have HVAC companies and we're in the dead of summer, that shoulder season, we're struggling with like capacity and trying to get to folks. And so I think that was an awesome nugget.
Yeah.
What was your big takeaway, do you think?
Yeah, I think controlling the conversation is something that I talked to him about in the middle of his presentation, kind of walked him back, where I think a lot of smaller brands, they try to multiply the workforce. So yeah, you're a CSR, you're also going to be the office manager, you're also going to do some QuickBooks work for us, right? That's natural. Shoot, I've fallen victim to it all the time here. I know you guys get mad at me when I do it, but it's like, well, we got workforce here, like busy hands. So he was saying like you need to be doing outbound and be just a call center rep. That way that you can really own that craft. But what it came back to is controlling the conversation for me and the psychological side of, I feel when I listen to clients, call centers, a lot of times they let the call happen to them.
Yep.
And so the psychology of, look, yes, you're calling me, but I'm controlling the narrative and I'm going to make you feel like you're in control, but really I'm guiding you. And I think that's what the urgency list comes with, because we hear a lot of times, oh, man, we're really backed up. Let me see. You hear that, okay, well, I'm typing away. You have to have an immediate out route, because as you're doing those and the pauses, you're losing trust.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do you know what you're doing? If you can't look at your spreadsheet or your call books, like what are you doing? And so if you immediately say, hey, I'm going to try to get you on the urgency list. Let me put you on a brief hold because I want to see if I can squeeze you in quicker. But I might have to put you on the urgency list. Give me 10 seconds. Quick hold. Come back. I'm sure even putting them on a hold isn't a great idea, but it's just controlling that conversation.
For sure. Yeah. And specifically on the outbound stuff, one thing that Ben said a long time ago, and I learned some stuff at Pantheon this last year, number one, Ben said like your CSRs should like never have idle hands, right? The other thing that really stuck out to me at Pantheon, I went to like a CSR panel, and these ladies talked about, a lot of times, the owners or, whoever the CSR managers are saying like, hey, I need you to book 10 inbound calls, right, a day. And they flipped it and said, hey, no, you need 10 calls a day. And you can either get them inbound or you can get them outbound, right? And, and they would give them list of unsold estimates, cancellations, and then they would have that list throughout the day. And they were able to, when they weren't getting calls inbound, they could start calling outbound. And on like unsold estimates and cancellations, they were also spiffing their CSRs like 1% on any of those jobs that came back in after all. And so to me, I was like I never really thought about it, thinking about total calls and not just inbound, right? I think everybody is just always, concerned about, inbound. But from an outbound perspective, how can you give yourself an edge? And I think really, man, that is what turns like good businesses into like great businesses, because they're just doing this little extra, and they're giving their CSRs incentives, they're giving them the tools, the resources, and they're setting those expectations of like, hey, I never want you to have idle hands, and we got to keep, this thing going all the time.
Yeah, and Service Titan's done a great job with their second chance leads, and there are areas there where it's pretty quick for you to be able to find those people and call them back, and I think outbounding is huge.
For sure. Cool. All right, we got a couple minutes here. So, New Year's resolution. You said you had hundreds of them.
Yeah, I always have a few, and I try not to say resolutions, but it's like, okay, I need to shift my mind.
Goals.
But yeah, I think my number one is no more drinking at home.
Okay.
And so
that's a good one.
That's, I've already experienced in the last like 15 days a little better sleep. And,
nice.
So that one, and then balancing out, because we talk about good content in, good content out. It's the same with the call center. If they're taking good data in, you're going to get good data out.
Yep.
Me just listening to less political crap and trying to focus on growth and personal health. Yeah.
Mine's, I guess, pretty cliche. It's just, focusing on health. Last year, I was successful in losing like about 30 pounds. So, trying to continue that this year and just make sure I got good heart health, just with the history of my family. And then also just trying to be more intentional on relationships with people and like sharing gratitude. Like this morning, I was thinking in the shower, which is this is going to sound weird. So, but I was thinking about Marsha Barnes, who, I met at, Service Titan event a long time ago. She's just been so gracious in her like mentorship and just, sharing things with me. And I just thought like, man, I need to like text her or call her and just tell her. And so I want to do more of that this year because I just feel like I have so many things to be grateful for and so many people that have poured into me. I just want them to know like, hey, you're making an impact, and I'm gonna take all that great information that you've given me and tutelage and apply it to my life.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, you observed, you interpreted, and you applied.
hey,
And,
there we go, dude.
you know,
Oh yeah.
it's something, yeah, it's something else that, I mean, I just talked to a good friend of mine that he's amazing at being direct. And it's a deficiency I have because I don't like hurting people's feelings. I like my own peace and security,
Yeah.
whatever. That's another thing that I'm actively working on is being more direct.
Yeah.
And I just sent him a voicemail, which this is another thing. I want to call people more instead of texting because I feel it's more intentional. And so I just called him on a Friday afternoon when I was leaving the office and said, hey, just want to say I appreciate this about you. It's made me really want to change the way I communicate. I've told him this before.
Yeah, yeah.
He was in the middle of a very emotional situation, helping family move out of a home. And he told me he listened to the voicemail like 3 times over the weekend because he needed a pick-me-up. And
That's
so
awesome, bro.
we never know what somebody else is going through,
Yeah.
and we need to reach out for that human connection.
It's a
Maybe
beautiful
the pendulum
thing.
swinging back.
Dude, that's awesome. So cool. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As all the podcasters say, make sure you like and subscribe, share it with your friends. But truly appreciate all the people who have been tuning in. Hopefully you guys find value. If you have any questions, comments, just drop them down in the comment section, and we'll try to address them in future shows, or just reply in the comments. So later. Thank you guys. Sweet. That was a good one, dude.
Ohio State's gonna win.